We're going to switch gears here a little bit, and we're going to talk about the people side of things. That is an interest of mine, and I think it's a common issue out there. How do we get people engaged in this process of saving babies, if I can say? I'd like to simplify this discussion to basically two kinds of farms. The farm on the left is a farm that would achieve 75% livability. The farm on the right, 90% survival of piglets. The farm on the left actually, I think, somewhat represents the North American average. Average farm saves around 75%. But at the same time, farms with equal opportunities, no special advantages, they will achieve 90% survival. So the question is, why do identical farms have such dramatic difference in outcomes? And just remember, even in North America, the difference between these two numbers represents millions of pigs. Just so you understand my numbers, I'm suggesting that the average farm might lose 10% during birthing, 15% pre-wean, so we have a livability of 75%, or we could say a wastage of 25%. On the other hand is top 10% farms that can achieve 3% loss during birthing and only have a 7% pre-weaning mortality, and that's how I come up with my 90% livability. Just so you understand what I think a farm consists of, I've written about this circle of caring, and we tend to think that piglet survival is related to the care that caregivers give pigs, but I think that's short-sighted. The circle's actually much bigger because we have ownership here who has responsibilities. They are the ones that provide the facilities, some of the staffing, budgets, etc. They're in charge of sometimes spending money to eliminate disease. They have very important responsibilities in this. Then we have supervisory people. Their jobs are largely to take care of the people in the chain. They maybe have organizational and training responsibilities, but these two positions are largely people in nature. We tend to focus on caregivers, and yes, it's true, they're the ones that are hands-on. They take care of the pigs, and I think there's a lot of focus on this piece right here, maybe letting this part of the circle get a free ride. It's always interesting to me, the pigs have a responsibility too, because if they don't take care of the owners with profits, the owners suffer problems. So, initially as a veterinarian, and that was a long time ago that I became one, I tended to think that the problem was the strategy of taking care of these babies. And it's unbelievable, but in my career, the amount of pigs that are presented on day one has doubled. That's in a crazy or a amazing statistic that the sow is now having almost double the pigs that she did when I started practice in 1980. And I think a lot of focus is based, this is a real live picture, I took it. She just had 22 pigs, and that seems like a lot of pigs, but the two sows beside her, for some reason, had 22 also that morning. So we had 3 sows there with an extra litter of pigs between them. And there's a lot of work, a lot of people that think, how do we take care of all of these pigs? Well, at the risk of being controversial here, I've kind of eventually decided that the art or the strategy of saving babies is intuitive and repetitive. What do I mean by that? I would suggest that it's intuitive that a baby needs born timely. It's intuitively that they need to stay warm, that they need to get milk, and they need to have milk every day. So really the things that a baby needs aren't very complicated. People understand that, and they can be easily trained on an individual pig to do those things. I would also suggest that it's very repetitive. A new employee on their first day of work will take care of 10 moms, deliver 150 babies. If you add that up for a few months or a year, they're literally delivering thousands of moms and tens of thousands of babies. So caregivers, they actually have lots and lots of reputation or reps on learning how to take care of babies. So if strategy is not the problem, why do we have these large losses? Well, I would suggest that we're missing out on the piece here, and that's called urgency. When you have baby anything, everything about a baby is urgent. They have to be born timely. They have to get colostrum timely. They have to stay warm timely. They have to get milk every day timely. Everything is about time. And I would suggest, I mentioned the repetitive nature of pig production. It's really hard for people to maintain a sense of urgency, because essentially this urgency has to be carried out on a 24-hour basis. So I would suggest that when we're looking at problems, the number one thing that I look for is there a sense of urgency about taking care of babies, or is there a sense of complacency? And I think most of the time that's where you'll find the problem. In fact, if you think about it, this complacency actually involves the whole circle. Ownership can become very complacent about piglet survival. They've had a high pre-weaning mortality for years and years and years, and they've come to expect that. They've had lots of initiatives to try to fix that. It's failed, and so over time they develop a sense of complacency. Supervisors, managers copy it, so do caregivers. And in this circle, there's just a lot of complacency about taking care of babies. On the right-hand side is a farm that has a circle of urgency where everybody is on board, everybody's doing their part. And if you can bear with me for a word picture, when we try to change this situation, I might suggest that this over here might be a person that's had poor eating habits since they were in grade school. And they've ate poorly their whole life, and now they've gained weight, they're out of shape. And the question I have for you as a crowd, bringing information to that person, is it going to change their eating habits? I would suggest not, because the problem has become chronic, and I would suggest that is true on many, many farms. The problem of high pre-wean or high or low piglet survival has become chronic, and you're not going to fix the problem simply with information. So here's the problem. How do we, as people who would like to improve things or create change, how do we take a chronic 75% situation and move it over to the right side and make it be 90%? That has been literally what I have been involved in practice for the last 40 years. And I would be the first to say that I've had some successes and I've had some failures. But one thing I've figured out is that in this problem, there's only one thing that I can control. I can't control the owners, the managers, the supervisors, the caregivers. The only person I can control or change is myself. And so the rest of my talk is basically talking about what I think is important as a veterinarian, as someone who wants to create change. What do I need to bring to the farm in order to help create change? Because that's the one thing in the whole problem that I am in control of. So, first thing I think that I need to bring to a farm is passion. I need to be passionate about this problem. In the 80s, I spent a year in North Carolina. It's a long story. But I came home to central Nebraska, and I was very passionate about bringing what I saw in North Carolina back to my home state. I had learned about PSY, the whole process of what determines large sow productivity, and I was passionate that pigs could be saved and that pre-weaning mortality could be lowered. So I would suggest if you're not passionate about this problem, it's going to be very difficult to help it. I would also suggest that when you're young and dumb, and oftentimes we are even at my age, we may not be able to fix this problem, but we can always be useful to the farm. And that's how you get credibility to help a farm with piglet survival, is on a weekly, on a yearly, on a career basis. You bring your usefulness to the farm. As a veterinarian, I can solve disease, I can put out protocols, I can instruct with medications, I can return my phone calls, I can return my emails. Every day that I am useful to the farm, I think I'm building influence and potentially being able to help this problem. I think I also need to be a lobbyist. I don't know why, but for some reason I have never gotten tired of lobbying for the needs of a pig. When I see a cold pig, I complain about it. When I see a hungry pig, I mention them. As we all know, pigs can't talk, and if we're from the outside coming in, I think a lot of times the people have become complacent. They're used to all these problems. At the very least, I can communicate for the pigs. So it's very important, if you're going to help a farm, you've got to take on your role of being a lobbyist. Next, I think you need to be a copycat. I've never been a very good researcher, but I think I'm pretty good at applying research. And I also think I can be a bird dog on when I think someone has achieved success. And if they have success, I'd like to find out why. Earlier in my career, I was consumed about comfort zones. And I think, spent about 20 years figuring out what I thought was a good comfort zone for a piglet. And a few years ago, I wrote an article about it, about 10 important points. But as I thought about those 10 points, I essentially stole them from 10 other people. So you've got to copy success, and I think not be a lone ranger out there on some magical thing you put in the feed. Success builds on itself, and a lot of people have pieces of the puzzle. As a veterinarian, one of the things that I would like to be remembered for is a teacher. And to me, the primary job of a teacher is to simplify things. And when I go to a farm, that's always my goal, is to make things as simple as possible. I try to put out simple protocols, one-page handouts. I try to make my instructions simple. And I've got my piglet survival down to 4 points. I want this all done by 24 hours. I want the pig to be born unstressed. I want him to get colostrum. I want him to be in a good family. And I want him to be a good home. And I really don't care how you do this, but when I'm on your farm, I'm going to be asking you 1,000 questions in these 4 areas about whether you've thought through how you're going to accomplish this on the farm. I really believe having a simple message that's appropriate for the farm is a large part of helping farms get better. Next, I think you need to realize that this is not about the pigs, it's about the people. The people are the ones with the real problems, and so you're going to need some people skills, and we all think we're above average in this, including myself. But if you're going to make changes in this circle of caring, you've got to be good with people. I'm sorry, if you're not good with people, I don't believe you can help a farm with piglet survival. Just a few things: being authentic, smiling, asking questions, learning and using names, that's a tough one, encouraging farms, not arguing, and being a good communicator. You've got to realize that the problem is largely about the people. Ultimately, you don't need to do this day one as a new person to the farm, but eventually you need to know where you want to take a farm. I would like to think that I could go to a farm today and come up with a plan about where they need to head. Now granted, they may not adopt the plan based upon how much influence I have with the system, but I need to have worked out in my mind what would work for this farm. You need to be able to create a vision for a farm. My next point, which I really feel is my most important point, I think you need to pay attention to this one, but you need to be a disciple maker. Now that maybe is a little bit of a foreign term, but if you think about it, you're going to go to a farm a few hours a month at very best, maybe once a month, maybe twice a month. You need to help create someone that's as passionate about saving babies as you are, somebody that works on the farm that can carry out these things that you've been talking about on your herd visits. This was my first disciple. His name is Dana. I've actually first knew him when he was a high school kid. I've known him for 40 years. I often tell Dana, I say, Dana, your biggest handicap is that you've only had one veterinarian in your life. You've had no exposure. But Dana is probably the best manager I've ever met, and I could give an hour talk on the things that Dana does. But if I put Dana on a farm, I'll guarantee you piglet mortality, unless you had disease, piglet mortality would not be a problem. You need people on the farm that believe in the same things that you do just as passionately as you do. I would also suggest that this is not a one and done thing with managers. You can't create somebody and then walk away to a different farm. This is actually a lifetime. Managers, caregivers, they need lifetime coaching. Why else do we have coaches for sports teams? This is another This is another manager that I'm quite proud of. His name is Jose. I also met him when he was young enough to be in high school, even though he wasn't. He only knew Spanish. Today, years later, he's an American citizen. This was a celebration we had for him. But Jose is top of the line for taking care of people and pigs. And I guess one of the things I'm very proud of is being involved in his life. I think you also need to be a scorekeeper. This is something that I devised about 25 years ago, but I have the farms, the managers, used to be faxes, fax in their weekly results to me. I want it to me. I put it in a sheet and I circulate it to my farms. And you say, why do I do that? Well, my word picture for that is, why do kids come and show their report cards to their parents? Kids want their parents to know how they're doing, and I think the same way when you build influence with farms and you ask for their numbers on a weekly basis, it becomes a time of almost celebration when they can turn in their numbers. As I was getting ready to come up here Friday, somewhat unsolicited, I had a farrowing lead text me his weekly numbers, which I hadn't even asked him to do that, and it wasn't his job. But he had had a good week, and he wanted me to know about that, because I know that I'm an important, he would like to please me. And you think about this, ultimately what you're trying to do is to get the farm to please you and to turn in good numbers. And I think that's part of the leadership piece. Lastly, this isn't a one and done. You've got to be persistent and persuasive. If you get discouraged when people don't do the things you want, you got to get over that. You've just got to stay persistent. 24/7 care is a high hurdle. I know it's difficult for a lot of farms to incorporate this, but I guess I'm somewhat proud of the fact that today I go to 12 farms a month, 3 different ownership groups, and all 12 of them practice 24/7 care. And that wasn't easy, and I'm not saying that I'm the person responsible, but you've got to be persistent and you've got to be persuasive on why you think some of the things that you would like to accomplish are important. So, what do I have to be as a veterinarian? In order to help a farm, I think I need to be passionate, I need to be useful, I need to lobby for the pigs, I need to copy success, I need to be simple, 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 I need to remember it's about the people, I need to have a plan, I need to create disciples, I need to be committed to long-term mentoring, I need to have some way of keeping score, and ultimately I need to be very persistent. So, what is the end goal? The end goal is the culture. When you get to the point where the farm expects to be 90%, you essentially are done. You can go home and go to the lake, because all of a sudden a farm that's at 90%, if they slip to 88%, for example, they're starting to have crisis meetings on their own. So that's the goal, is to get the expectation at 90%. And that's why if you look at my total, it's not about strategy and all these other things. It's about fixing the culture so that the farm expects to save babies. That is the end goal. And so, as my last slide, and this is one of my practice philosophies, but you'll get the most bang on a farm by asking questions. Most of the things that you want to accomplish on a farm, you get through asking questions. I think the best form of teaching is asking questions, and when you ask questions and people give you the answers, I think ultimately they will figure out the things that they need to do and move toward them. So I have no idea how much time we have. Are we out of time?
Yep, we are good.
Okay, good. So thank you, and my thoughts.
Time for some questions.
Yeah.
Yes, we want to open. Just give me a minute, Dr. Castro, and we'll give time for people to ask questions to Dr. Coleman. Any questions? Right, everybody hungry, ready to, yeah?
I thought it was interesting in your circle of care that you mentioned the owners. And so is there particular way that you position that, or how do you help the owners care and have that passion, not only necessarily for production and performance, but for the actual care of these babies?
Yeah, that's a very good question. How do you influence owners? I think earlier in your career you may not have the influence to do that, but as you've been useful to the farm and start to gain credibility with the owners, a real valuable thing, I think, is to take owners to successful farms, schedule visits, and go to a successful farm. And I've been involved in a lot of farm tours. It's another story in itself. Very few people on farm tours really understand what's going on because they don't ask questions, and that's another story in itself. But when you take owners to a successful system and ask the questions, I think things will start to click in owners' heads. But that's a very practical way, is to do off-site visits with owners, not one, but maybe many times until they get it, that there is more potential than they're achieving, because they are a very important piece, and they've got to remove obstacles to saving babies.